At least 32 people are dead in Venezuela tonight, killed by two great earthquakes, a magnitude 7.2 and a magnitude 7.5 that struck the same stretch of Caribbean coast just 39 seconds apart. The country's most powerful quakes in over a century, and the acting president is warning that number is going to climb. The footage coming out of Caracas is hard to look at. Entire walls sheared off, apartment towers, furniture left hanging in the open air, dust columns rising over two neighborhoods. A 22-story building in the Altamira district flattened to a heap of concrete, with neighbors screaming the names of people buried inside. Two strong earthquakes hit the country in quick succession on Wednesday. A magnitude 7.2 foreshock near San Felipe, followed 40 seconds later by a larger 7.5 quake. But here's the part that matters. For the millions of people living through it, there were never two earthquakes. There was one long, unbroken convulsion of the ground that simply would not stop. For people in Venezuela, it is likely that they experienced this as a single, very long period of shaking. One survivor wrote 3 words to a seismology agency that say everything. The earthquake lasted a long time. Another, I had never felt an earthquake like that. It was a national holiday. Venezuela was marking the Battle of Carabobo, so most people weren't at work, they were home. One aid worker was watching the Toy Story movie with his sisters when the earthquake struck. Halfway through the film, everything went dark and everything started to shake. The shaking lasted between 2 and 3 minutes. It felt endless. 2 to 3 minutes. Hold on to that, because in earthquake terms, that is an eternity, and it's the key to why so many buildings came down. To understand it, you have to understand what the cameras couldn't show you, what was happening underground in those 39 seconds between the two shocks. Start at the coast. The first quake struck near the town of Moron, about 168 kilometers west of Caracas, at a depth of 22 kilometers. Just 39 seconds later, an even larger magnitude, 7.5 tremor, ruptured almost the same patch of crust, this time only 10 kilometers deep. The two epicenters lay an estimated 3 miles apart. Aptivation, 3 miles apart. 39 seconds apart. That is not a normal aftershock sequence, and seismologists have a specific name for it. This earthquake was the second event in a doublet. This magnitude 7.5 main shock was preceded just 39 seconds before by a 7.2 foreshock, the USGS said. A doublet. And it's one of the rarest and most dangerous things a fault can do. Here's why. An earthquake doublet occurs when two major earthquakes of comparable magnitude strike either the same fault or closely linked fault systems within a very short period, usually seconds or minutes apart. Unlike a typical earthquake sequence, where a powerful main shock is followed by weaker aftershocks, neither event is clearly dominant. Normally, one big quake bleeds off the stress, and the rest is just rattle. In a doublet, the second blow is as hard or harder than the first, and the mechanism is almost cruel in its physics. A major rupture usually releases enough stress along a fault to prevent another. But in some cases, neighboring fault segments are already under intense tectonic pressure. When the first fault ruptures, it can transfer stress to an adjacent segment, triggering a second large earthquake almost instantly. The first quake doesn't relieve the second one. It pulls the trigger on it. Now here's why that turns a disaster into a catastrophe. When seismologists studied an earlier doublet, where a magnitude 7.0 was followed 19 seconds later by a 6.8, they found something chilling. The effect of such powerful shocks so close in time was to double the duration of ground shaking, bringing more structures to the point of collapse, and to double the area affected by the strongest shaking. Double the duration. That's the secret of those 2 to 3 minute timelines. Buildings don't just fail because the ground moves hard. They fail because it moves hard for a long time. A wall can survive 20 seconds of violent shaking. The cracks open, the joints loosen, but it holds. Stretch that same shaking to a minute, 2 minutes, every crack widens, every weld fails, and the structure finally gives. The doublet didn't just hit Venezuela twice. It held the ground in motion long enough to finish off the buildings the first shock had already wounded, and Venezuela's buildings were uniquely set up to lose that fight. Two things stacked against them at once. The first is the dirt under the capital. A geophysicist told Al Jazeera the damage was so extensive because Venezuela lies in a massive strike-slip fault zone straddling the Caribbean and South American plates. Caracas is also in a deep sedimentary basin, which further amplifies the seismic waves. A sedimentary basin acts like a bowl of gelatin when seismic waves hit soft sediment. They slow down, bunch up, and grow. The shaking that left the bedrock got bigger and lasted longer by the time it reached the city. The second factor is what was built on that dirt. In the hard-hit Altamira area of Caracas, many of the collapsed buildings are built on sediments, making them much more vulnerable. There's also lots of informal housing across the country, and those types of buildings are not prepared to sustain very strong earthquakes. A long, amplified, doubled shaking beneath a city of soft soil and brittle construction that is the recipe that turned a 22-story tower in Altamira into a pile of rubble. The shaking radiated out in rings. Locally, near Moron, it was severe. Regionally, it reached Caracas, 150 kilometers away, and the city still shook violently. Nationally, it slammed the coast. And at the very edge, it was felt impossibly far. Buildings were evacuated in cities as far as Brazil's Amazon, about 1,050 miles from Caracas, over 1,000 miles. That's the footprint of a doublet. But the worst single blow didn't land in the capital. La Guaira, on the nation's northern coast, was apparently the hardest hit. Dozens of buildings have collapsed there. The state of La Guaira is facing a true tragedy and has become a disaster zone. That's the coastal strip that holds the country's main airport, and the airport itself was gutted. Simón Bolívar International Airport, the main gateway to Caracas, was shuttered after sustaining severe damage. Footage showed falling debris and people running for cover. Behind every one of these numbers is a stairwell, a doorway, a family deciding whether to run. One woman who escaped a collapsed building in Caracas said all the walls were cracked. They managed to open the door however they could. There was a cloud of smoke that wouldn't let them see, and when they went downstairs, the scene was like a horror movie. They had to climb over the rubble. And from her building, she only saw one family make it out. Now, the existential part, the reason 32 may be only the beginning. The USGS estimated the eventual death toll could range between 10,000 and 100,000. The agency issued a red alert, estimating a 44% chance the death toll tops 10,000. That gap between 32 confirmed and tens of thousands feared is the rescue window still being fought right now, in the dark, over collapsed concrete. And this is a country with almost nothing left in reserve. Venezuela has already faced economic challenges and poverty, and the UN says almost 8 million of the country's 28 million people were in need of assistance as of May. Then came another wound that doesn't show in any rubble pile. Parts of the capital lost power and cell phone signal. The lack of signal deepened the distress of many families, particularly those among the more than 7.7 million people who have left the country. Millions of Venezuelans abroad, staring at phones that won't connect, unable to learn whether their parents are alive. History is whispering here too. The catastrophic 1812 earthquake, which also fell on a holiday, destroyed much of Caracas and Mérida and killed an estimated 15,000 to 26,000 people. 2 centuries later, almost to the script, another holiday, the same coast, the ground heaving again. So the open questions tonight are the ones no one can answer yet. How many people are still under the concrete in La Guaira, where rescuers have barely reached? There are bound to be many aftershocks. Their distribution will outline the rupture area. A magnitude 7.5 typically ruptures 100 to 200 kilometers of fault. Figuring out whether it went west or east, and the total length, will mark out the damage areas. If that rupture reached toward Caracas, the worst maps haven't even been drawn. Right now, the ground is still moving. People are still sitting in the streets, holding their pets, afraid to go back inside. Crews are still digging through the dark, and the official count is still only the count of bodies they've reached. The USGS aftershock forecast updates by the hour, and the moment that rupture map shows which way the fault tore, we'll know whether the heart of Caracas was spared or is next in line. The instant that picture sharpens, you'll hear it here.